All right, let's jump back into Illustrator and learn how to export these and send them as a final file to our client, or in this case, it's for ourselves, but hey, it's good practice. All right, so let's jump into Illustrator, and what I want to do is we'll go to File, Save As. I'll jump over to my Finals folder, and inside of there, we'll jump over to the EPS folder, and I'll change my format down here from Illustrator to Illustrator EPS. And we want to use the artboard, so I'll click on that. We'll use all of the artboards, and then I'll hit Save. Everything like this is just fine. There is a chance up here at the version you might want to save a legacy format, and that you'll have to, you'll if you go to send this to print or somewhere and they say, hey, we need, version whatever for CS3, well then you could come over here and export that later to give them something they can work with if they don't have the most current version. But typically just leaving it alone like this is fine. So I'll hit OK. We'll export that EPS file, and right now it's going to be writing those out. When I jump back over there, I can see they're here. Now, one interesting thing when you send an EPS out, it actually does 4 files. We had 3 artboards, but the 4th file is a file with all of them in one document. So I usually delete that. So if I hit spacebar, I can do a quick preview and see which one that is. And you'll notice the names too. The names changed. So it exported the artboard name. So this is _details. This is full color. And this is one color. And now this is just the original Illustrator file that we exported, and see it has everything in there. Well, we don't need to send them that, so I'm just going to hit Command Delete to delete that from that folder. Now let's go ahead and export some of these other ones. Now, an interesting thing, when we go to File, Save As, the only options that we'll have from that menu will be the EPS, Illustrator, and Adobe PDF file types. We can also do SVGs, but right now I'm just worried about these couple files. Come here to Finals, and we'll jump over to the PDF. We're going to use all the artboards here, and this will just rename DM Logo Final is fine. I'll hit Save. All of this is great just as is. We can leave the Illustrator editing capabilities on. We'll hit Save PDF, and when we check that out right there, it spits out just one file because it actually packages up those logos within the one document, which is kind of handy. So we got our PDF done now. Now for the other file types, instead of coming to File, Save As, we need to jump down to File, Export. So we'll click on Export, and since it's on PNG, I'll just use a PNG. I'll hit Use Artboards. We'll jump over to our PNG folder. There we go. And let's go ahead and hit Export. Now, you could do a couple versions of the PNG. Right now, I'm just going to do one, but you could do a print-based version at 300 and then come back later and do another one at 72 for web-based. Right now, I'm just going to leave it at 300. And I'm going to make sure that transparent is turned on. So PNG, it stands for Portable Network Graphic, and it supports alpha transparency. A JPEG does not. What that means is a JPEG will export with a white background. It doesn't know how to make things transparent. But a PNG does. It knows how to keep transparency. So as I scroll around, you can see it, it blurs it out on my system here. But if we look, we get these subtle colors poking through. So the artboard is actually transparent, which is why we use a PNG when I send these off for people to use on their websites. And we'll also notice the canvas of this, it included the artboard. So that gap we made with that letter M here for our width stays with it to protect the clear space of our logo. So that's pretty handy. All right, we've got all those versions. They look good. Now let's do the last couple versions, the JPEG. And this one, I'll show you the example of print versus web. So come over here to File, Export. We'll jump into that JPEG for print. We'll start there. So I'll click this little drop down, and we'll find our JPEG option. And you can see down here we do have a lot of other options of files we can export, but the ones that I'm showing you are the ones that are the most popular that I end up sending to clients that they use. So we'll use artboards, we use all of them. I'll hit Export, and this one's for print, so we're going to leave our color mode in CMYK. Because this is a final file, I'll turn the quality all the way up to maximum. Since it's for print, we'll change our resolution to 300, and we'll leave this little checkbox selected, which basically embeds a color profile to try and get the colors to match as close as possible no matter what system you're on, whether you're on a Windows or a Mac, or depending on what printer you go to. Hopefully all the colors will line up and look good. I'll just jump right in and export the next version. We'll hit Export, and this time we're going to do the web-based JPEG. So we'll use artboards, hit Export, make sure we're on JPEG right there. We'll change our color mode to RGB for web. and I'll leave this at maximum, that's fine, but we'll change our resolution down to 72, and again we'll embed this profile, now sRGB. So this is just a standardized color profile that again tries to make your colors look as consistent across the board no matter who's viewing it on any device. So with that exported, let's jump over here and take a look. So we have our print files, and we'll notice the size. This one's about 2 megabytes, and if we jump over to this guy, it is much smaller at 118 kilobytes. So we've got our print-based versions, and then we have our web-based version. Now, one thing to be cautious of, and maybe even tell your clients, is that when they see the JPEG for print, it is in CMYK. So there's a chance if they look at the colors on their screen, it's going to look terrible. It might look faded and muted. But when they print it, it should print flawlessly. So that is how I export my files. The only other step here would be to include the fonts if you want to. So I might right-click, make a new folder, and I'll just call it fonts, and I put a space at the front of it. So that way it stacks it to the top. And then I would open up on a Mac, I'd open up Font Book, search for that font. And one thing, pay attention to font licensing. If you're buying fonts, or depending on the fonts you're using, you need to have a license to share this with them. So always follow that practice. But I'm showing you how I would gather my fonts, depending on which font it is and if I can share that license. So I would right-click on this font and I would show in Finder. There it is. I'd hit Command-C to copy. Come back over here, Command-V to paste, and now that font comes with my folder. I'll right-click on that finals file and I will hit Compress Finals. On a PC, I think it's send to compressed or zipped folder. And now we've got a zipped folder, so everything's contained right in there. It's only 9.4 megs, and I would post this either in Basecamp or send it via email. Let's just jump into Basecamp real quick, and I'll go to that logo file that we made. And post a new message. We'll call it Final Files. And then I use an app called Text Expander. It's pretty handy, and I have all kinds of snippets that I've already made. So I just typed in LLOGO for logo, but I had an extra L in there, and it spits out this text that I send to my new clients. So I can come in here and highlight. I just usually put this in bold so it looks better. And this explains to my client what the file types are and why I included it. And then I will select files from my computer or drag and drop that zipped folder right into it. And when it's done uploading, I can go ahead and post this message and send my client the final file. So there it is. Hopefully you learned a lot in this section about creating logos and exporting them, and be sure to check the project files for those assets as well.